Amen. Thank you. Okay. Let's look at Nehemiah 5. Nehemiah 5, I think that's where we left off, got ready to take up, but we're going to probably speed through a couple of these things. In chapter 5, we have Nehemiah. The heading in my Bible, I don't know about yours, and remember this is not inspired, but the heading in my Bible regarding chapter 6, or the first 13 verses, is Nehemiah deals with oppression. And then we have in verses 14 through 19 the generosity of Nehemiah. So let's go ahead and if someone will begin reading in chapter 5, verse 1 for us, please.
And there was a great cry of the people and of their wives against their brethren, the Jews. For there were that said, We, our sons and our daughters, are many. Therefore, we take up corn for them that we may eat and live. Some also there were that said, We have mortgaged our lands, vineyards, and houses that we might buy corn because of the dark. There were also that said, We have borrowed money for the king's tribute, and that upon our lands and vineyards. Yet now our flesh is as the flesh of our brethren, our children as their children. And lo, we bring into bondage our sons and our daughters to be servants, and some of our daughters are brought into bondage already. Neither is it in our power to redeem them, for other men have our lands and vineyards. And I was
hold on a second. So there is this outcry, this complaint regarding their financial situation. Things are not looking great. Remember that they have been sacrificing regarding the rebuilding of the wall. Bear in mind also that this is the third return. So we have more brethren coming in that were not there before, and so things are a little tight. But then we find some anger on the part of Nehemiah. So verse 6, keep going.
And I was very angry when I heard their cry in these words. Then I consulted with myself, and I rebuked the nobles and the rulers, and said unto them, Ye exact usury every one of his brother, and I set a great assembly against them. And I said unto them, We after our ability have redeemed our brethren the Jews, which were sold unto the heathen. And will ye even sell your brethren, or shall they be sold unto us? Then held they their peace, and found nothing to answer. Also I said, It is not good that ye do aught, ye not to walk in the fear of our God, because of the reproach of the heathen, our enemies. I likewise and my brethren and my servants might exact of them money and corn. I pray you, let us leave off this usury. Restore, I pray you, to them even this day their lands, their vineyards, their olive yards, and their houses, also the 100th part of the money, and of the corn, the wine, and the oil, that ye exact of them.
Okay, stop for just a minute. All right, so what's significant about verse 10? So he's angry at what they're doing. What is usury? What are they doing?
Like interest.
Yeah, they're charging interest here. Not being compassionate. Again, after this return, we know that there is stress put upon the nation as a whole. But then, what's significant then about verse 10? Anything? This is Nehemiah speaking.
He thinks he doesn't go to the Lord.
No, that's not what I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
But I thought that was pretty significant too. The back up in, you notice that back up in verse, was that 6 or verse 7? I rebuked the nobles. I after serious thought. What did your version say there? King James said something about I took counsel with myself. Yeah. I can't remember, but that did kind of stand out, didn't it? With the people, yeah. He says, listen, I'm lending them money and grain. So I'm not expecting something of you that I'm not doing myself. So I'm not charging usury. So how about you stop as well? All right, so in other words, he's making a sacrifice as well. He's not playing a hypocrite here. He's participating in this. Okay, verse 11.
Restore, I pray you, to them even this day their lands, their houses, also the 100th part of the money and of the corn, the wine, and the oil that ye exacted them. Then said they, We will restore them, and will require nothing of them, so will we do as thou sayest. Then I called the priests and took an oath of them that they should do according to this promise. Also I shook my lap and said, So God, shake out every man from his house and from his labor that performeth not this promise. Even thus be he shaken out and emptied. And all the congregation said, Amen, and praised the Lord. And the people did according to this promise.
Okay, I think it's rather interesting that that this nation typically has a practice of disobeying their leaders, doesn't it? I mean, that's pretty much their history, right? We know that there are generations that arise that follow faithfully, but typically speaking, every time we turn around, they're disobedient. And they find one reason or another to rebel. I mean, what period of time can you think of that really exemplifies that with their history?
Civil War.
With their history, with Israel. Yeah, when they rebelled. Judges, okay, during the period of the Judges. Solomon. What's that? Book of Numbers. Okay, so we have the wanderings. Pretty much just go ahead and pick you out a book of the Old Testament, right? And they're pretty much doing that, aren't they? So I think that it's somewhat encouraging here that there doesn't seem to be right here much pushback, right? I mean, they say, okay, we're going to restore, we're going to stop charging, we're going to give back property, we're going to give back money. Seems to be no argument. All right? So, I think that's worthy of pointing out. Okay, well, I'm going to go and start reading at verse 14, and then we're going to make a summary of a couple of chapters and move on a little bit. Verse 14, Moreover, from the time that I was appointed to be their governor in the land of Judah, from the 20th year until the 32nd year of King Artaxerxes, 12 years, neither I nor my brothers ate the governor's provisions. That's significant, isn't it? Shows some autonomy or independence. But the former governors who were before me laid burdens on the people and took from them bread and wine besides 40 shekels of silver. Yes, even their servants bore rule over the people, but I did not do so because of the fear of God. And why is he saying this because of the fear of God?
He was religious.
What does that have to do with taking these things from the governor, from the provisions of the governor? Because of the fear of God. What's that?
Well, that was the
What?
ultimate authority.
Okay. They're not. One thing, even though I know that he has, as far as the king is concerned, he has been the recipient of certain blessings bestowed upon him by the king, right? I mean, there were timbers and so forth. At the same time, though, we see a reliance upon God, don't we? And we also remember that there were others that, maybe we could put it this way, sometimes there are strings attached. And wasn't that the case in Ezra regarding their neighbors? We don't want your help. We've got this handled. Okay, so let's keep going and just kind of keep that in mind. Verse 16, Indeed, I also continued the work on this wall, and we did not buy any land. All my servants were gathered there for work, and at my table were 150 Jews and rulers, besides those who came to us from the nations around us. Now that which was prepared daily was 1 ox and 6 choice sheep. Also fowl were prepared for me, and once every 10 days an abundance of all kinds of wine. Yet in spite of this, I did not demand the governor's provisions, because the bondage was heavy on this people. Remember me, my God, for good, according to all that I have done for this people. Is he drawing attention to himself, by the way, needlessly here? Look at everything that I've done.
Not very humble.
I mean, this is Nehemiah. I'm not quick to say that he's wrong in this. I think that he's making a point, isn't he? Listen, this is the way that it's been done before. This is the way that might be expected, but this is the way that we're going to do it. And he's leading by example. Okay. In chapter 6, we have more problems coming against them. Somebody start reading at verse 1. I just want to get a few things out of this chapter. Actually, I want to make sure that we read all the way through the chapter, because this finishes the first portion of the book, and then the second and final section begins in chapter 7. So let's just read it. Somebody at verse 1. Somebody at verse 1.
Now it came to pass when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem and Arabian and the rest of our enemies heard that I had built a wall, and that there was no breach left therein, though at this time I had not set up the doors upon the gates, that Sanballat and Geshem sent unto me, saying, Come, let us meet together in some one of the villages in the plain of Ono. But they thought to do mischief.
Okay. All right, stop for a minute. Remember that they ridiculed, these people were ridiculing Israel to begin with, right? They're not going to be able to do this. This is crazy. And obviously they actually feared that they would do this, or they wouldn't have been so vocal, right? And so now he's making this point. When we completed it, and when there were no breaches in it, even though the gates were not yet done, now they're sending word, right? The work is almost complete. Now they want a meeting. Meeting on the plains, or in the plains of Ono. This has been commonly used for a long time regarding sermons on compromise, right? Meeting on the plains of Ono. But they thought to do me harm. So what did he do? Verse 3. Keep reading.
And I sent messengers unto them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease? Wilt I leave it and come down to you? Okay, stop for a minute.
Remember that one of the tools of the devil, Paul said that we're not ignorant of his devices. He also speaks of the wiles of the devil. One of the tools of the devil is distraction, right? In fact, we might say distraction and compromise, which would kind of go together right here anyway. But Nehemiah he's resolute regarding this. Listen, I'm engaged in a good work. I don't have time to mess with this. Why? Because he knew that this was not going to be a good meeting. He knew that they sought to do him harm, to do him mischief. I'm going to keep working, he says. And I know that this happens in all of our lives, but let me go ahead and say this from the standpoint of preachers. It is easy for, I know some brethren that I have been affiliated with to get caught up in some things that ultimately, while they might be okay in and of themselves, they get so caught up in those things that they leave undone other things that need to be done. All right, the Bible teaches. Let me point out two major roles that we see in the New Testament regarding Paul, for example. Paul he was an apostle. We know that. But what did he do primarily? What kind of work was he engaged in? Not. That's right, but not that kind of work. I mean, as far as the work in the church, evangelism. All right, he's constantly engaged in evangelism, going all over the world when he can, when he's not in prison, right? But the other thing that he's constantly engaged in We might put it under the heading of edification, but there's something specific. What are most of the letters that he writes dealing with? Problems in the church. Error. We have the responsibility of preaching the truth, and we have the responsibility of defending the truth. Whether that has to do with moral compromises amongst members or doctrinal compromises amongst false teachers coming in and swaying the brethren. I mean, this is a constant, right? But there has to be a proper balance, right? I mean, just as fervently as Paul was regarding being set for the defense of the gospel, Philippians 1:17, he was also minded toward evangelism. He was fervent in that. But I know, again, amongst a lot of brethren that I'm familiar with, they tend to camp out in this arena of defending the faith. And that's good. But if we do that only, what good is it? What good is it? Let me give you an example of this. And this was not a preacher. So this is just to tell you that you people are guilty too. Not just us preachers. Some of you, I know that I've told some of you, I don't know if I remember saying it in a class or publicly or whatever, but when we were in Oklahoma, we were striving to evangelize, some of us. I think as a whole the congregation was. But Tanya was at home. She was not working outside the home yet, and decided that she was just going to go through the phone book and start calling people in town and offering free Bible correspondence courses. And I mean, she got, in a matter of a few hours, she got a whole bunch of people signed up. And so she did that for a week or so, and we were up at the building and talking to a particular person and excited about it, obviously, and his response was, you know what, we better slow down on that. We're going to get a bunch of people in here who are not really converted, and this church is going to go liberal. Wow. Don't evangelize because the church might go liberal. That's crazy. But yet that's what happens. And I constantly think about those kinds of examples when I think about this idea of I'm doing a great work. I cannot come down. There are brethren that are so bent on that, and that almost exclusively, that evangelism doesn't take place. And let me go ahead and say this, that we could fit that same scenario into a number of different occasions and situations. All right, it's not just with evangelism and defense for the faith, but compromise, being so focused on one thing that we forget the big picture is dangerous. We need to remember that we need to engage in God's work. All right, where were we before I went on that rant? I'm sorry. Verse 4. Keep going.
Yet they sent unto me 4 times after this sort, and I answered them after the same manner. And then sent Sanballat his servant unto me in like manner the 5th time, and with an open letter in his hand.
All right, stop for just a minute. So it does this 4 times. Sanballat does this 4 times. Come down. Let's have a meeting. Come down. Let's have a meeting. Come down. Let's have a meeting. And then the 5th time, he writes a letter. All right, so what did the letter say?
Wherein was written, it is reported among the heathen, and Jashmu saith it, that thou and the Jews think to rebel, for which cause thou buildest the will, that thou mayest be their king according to these words. And thou hast also appointed prophets to preach of these at Jerusalem, saying, there is a king in Judah, and now shall it be reported to the king according to these words. Come now, therefore, and let us take counsel together.
Okay, so see what he's doing? He says, rumor has it. Rumor has it that you are building this wall because you're planning a rebellion, that you have a king, so this is treason. Against whom, by the way? against the king of Persia, against Persia. That's right. Okay? But what'd you say?
Chunk put in
I
the
said
wall.
it, I was like,
Don't go there. Okay.
I was talking to him.
I'm sorry. All right. So, what was the point of a wall? Matter of fact, Brother Jack brought this up the last time that we studied this. A city in these days and in these locations without a wall was what?
It's good.
Wow. I mean, they're just a sitting target, right? And basically they had been. I mean, that was the whole point of Babylon coming in and destroying this place and knocking down the wall. They're without defense. So the wall is not necessarily built for offensive purposes. Isn't that what this rumor is? It's built for defensive purposes. But I mean, I can see where there may still be this rebellion or whatever. Okay, so now he's compelling him. He's trying to convince him to listen. There are these rumors. Let's get them situated and taken care of. Come on down, right? All right, I'll take up here. So,
Thank you.
okay. Then I sent to him saying, "No such things as you say are being done, but you invent them in your own heart." Okay, that reminds me of another thing about you brethren. Us brethren. We have a few elders in here. I'm not going to ask them here on the spot if they ever hear this, but I've heard this. Because sometimes people come to the preacher, and I tell them, "No, that's an elder's matter. Go to them." That's my practice. I do. But here's something that I hear from time to time. You know, there's a lot of people that think, and then you just fill in the blank. Or there are a lot of people that are upset at this particular thing and whatever this is, right? And then when you whittle that thing down a little bit and just start asking the question, okay, who are these people? Who are these people? You see, rumor has, who are these people? And it turns out that it's just that guy. Maybe that guy and his wife, or that woman and her husband, or whoever. I mean, that's what it comes. A lot of people are saying that. Really? A lot?
Sounds better when it comes out like that.
It does, doesn't it? It does. And so what does he do? He's making this up, and Nehemiah calls him on it. You invent this in your own heart. You're dreaming this up. All right. For they all were trying to make us afraid, saying, their hands will be weakened in the work, and it will not be done. How would that weaken them? By saying that these rumors are flying around, how would that weaken the construction and the progress? The people in general?
Well, it's just what they're actually doing.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the idea of, whoa, we don't want to have that kind of reputation. So we're just going to ease off on this work. We don't want the king to think that we are rebelling, that we're revolting in any way. We'll just kind of hold off for a little while. Man, at the applications we could make here. It's another one of those things. Listen, should the church be concerned with its reputation in general? Yes. But is it possible to be so concerned with our reputation that we don't get the work done? Absolutely. I seem to recall that our Lord, who was he known to hang out with? The religious elite?
Sinners and publicans.
Sinners, yeah. The misfits, right? The rejects. The rejects. And we say that, you know, Phariseeism is deplorable. We don't want to engage in anything like that. And we turn around and say, you know, hey, you need to be careful hanging around those people. And that's not said in the context of their behavior might rub off on you. It's said in the context of you just need to get away from those people. That's going to make us look bad. Why are you hanging out with those people? Those that are well do not need a physician, right? Who needs the physician? Those that are sick. Those that are sick. Christ went where sin was. Did he engage in it? Did he endorse it?
No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think sometimes we get carried away, and there's a debate. Let me go and bring it up. Paul says, abstain from all appearance of evil.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I was just thinking.
Okay. Here's what I would challenge. We're not going to get into this too much. Maybe, then again, this is probably the end of Nehemiah, and now we're going to get off on this. But that is stated, if you look at that. Somebody look that verse up for me. Let's go and do this. Goodbye, Nehemiah. We'll come back in a minute. I think he writes that to the Thessalonians, right? Come on, you got smartphones, people. Come on. Okay, yeah. All right, 1 Thessalonians 5:22. Yeah, let's go ahead and let's start in verse 18. No, verse 19. And read through, 22. 19 through 22. 2 Thessalonians 5, 19 through 22. It's really short verses.
Quench
Somebody read.
not the spirit, despise not prophesying, prove all things, hold fast that which is good, abstain from all appearance of evil.
Okay, here's what I would suggest. That the context has to do with false teaching. And it's not get away from something if it looks bad, if it appears to be bad, but rather when evil makes its appearance, in this context in the form of false teaching, get away from it. Abstain from it. I mean, that's what he's talking about. Quench not the Spirit. So the Spirit is leading and guiding, and this is what the Spirit does in the first century. He reveals truth. Despise not prophesying. That's what the Holy Spirit does. He reveals to the prophets what they are to speak, so don't despise that. Now, when you do hear something, test the spirits. All right? Hold fast what is good, but what about when something is evil? You get away from it. That's right. You get away from it.
The lines of beware of false prophets.
Beware of false prophets. I think that's what he's talking about. So it's not, that behavior over there that doesn't really look good. Not saying that it is sinful, but it looks sinful. So you don't need to be involved. You don't need to, in that strip mall, you don't need to park in front of the liquor store, even though that's the only parking place, because that appears evil. Yeah. Right. He's talking about false teaching. When it makes its appearance, get away from it. But because what did Jesus do now? He hangs out with who? Sinners. He's hanging out with sinners. Doesn't that appear to be evil? Oh, okay. So it's not the same thing, is it? Yes, sir.
My brother, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
You see me come out of the bar, where are you going to play?
Oh, I didn't say go in the bar.
On the back door.
What I want to say, if you come put yourself in that situation, take a brother with you. We're not God, we're not Jesus Christ. You do not have this power.
Yeah.
And you go in there by yourself, wherever the condition is, that evil will eat you alive.
Yeah. And that's just foolishness, isn't it? Yeah. Don't be a dummy. Maybe we should there's a verse for that, right? Yeah, I definitely, I would agree. But my point here is, yeah, absolutely. We need to be wise. What did Jesus say? Be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. Okay, so how in the world did we get here? Back to Nehemiah.
No, but that was interesting.
Okay, so
You just go to Pensacola instead of drinking here, you drink at Pensacola. We got over 22 miles.
I don't know what you're talking about. Verse 9, though, says what? This is where we were. He says, their hands will be weakened in the work and it will not be done. That's where we were. maybe if we listen to what this rumor supposedly is, we might be tempted to kind of back off from that because we don't want to give the appearance that, we're causing a rebellion. He said, listen, we're not compromising here. We're going to do what we're supposed to do. Whether you think it looks bad or not, we're going to do what God said do. Okay? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the very reason that he's there is because... Yeah. Isn't that ironic that the king said do this, and these local governors and leaders that don't want it done, they're just trying to supplant and to keep it from being done. But notice how verse 9 ends. Now therefore, O God, strengthen my hands. So he sees that there's this call to compromise. Sees that it's tempting. Strengthen my hands, O God. Afterward, I came to the house of Shemaiah, the son of Deliah, the son of, anybody else want to read? Methatabel, who was a secret informer. I like that. And he said, let us meet together in the house of God, within the temple, and let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. Indeed, at night they will come to kill you. And I said, should such a man as I flee? And who is there such as I who would go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in. Then I perceived that God had not sent him at all, but that he pronounced this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. Wow. This is not the only time in the Bible we see such a thing, right? I mean, on numerous occasions, we see the wicked looking for baser sorts of people to hire and have them say things against the people of God. They do this with Stephen in the New Testament. They do it with Jesus, right? Somebody bring an accusation against them. If we have to hire somebody to lie regarding that accusation, we'll do that too. I mean, this is wickedness. And the thing that gets me is that when people do this kind of stuff thinking that they're serving God at the same time. All right, for this reason, he was hired, that I should be afraid and act that way and sin, so that they might have cause for an evil report, that they might reproach me. My God, remember Tobiah and Sanballat according to these their works, and the prophetess Noadiah, and the rest of the prophets who would have made me afraid. All right, so it's probably a good idea. Talking about, taking somebody in where we go that might be in a compromising situation. It's good sometimes just to step back and evaluate, right? What's this really about? What's this really about? All right, so verse 15 says, so the wall was finished on the 25th day of Elul in 52 days. And it happened when all our enemies heard of it, and all the nations around us saw these things, that they were very disheartened in their own eyes, for they perceived that this work was done by our God. Now, what would have happened had they compromised? What would that say about their God? He's weak, not powerful, or he's not commissioning these people anyway. Also in those days, the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and the letters of Tobiah came to them. So the nobles send to him. For many in Judah were pledged to him because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Ezra, and his son Jehohanan had married the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah. Also they reported his good deeds before me and reported my words to him. Tobiah sent letters to frighten me. People will just not let up, will they?
Where's Brother Shepherd? He could trip it out all of them.
Yeah, that's right. And in a really entertaining way. All right. Verse 1 of chapter 7, we'll start that. How much time do we have?
12 minutes or so.
Okay. 8, 12, do I get 15? I mean, here 20.
8 minutes.
Okay, 8 minutes. All right. One thing to keep in mind here is that there's always going to be discouragement, right? There are always going to be naysayers. There are always going to be people that are going to oppose, and we ought not be surprised at that. It ought not surprise us. I know that I bring this up quite frequently, but, well, I'm just going to do it anyway again. Our religious culture is almost dominated by the prosperity gospel. What is that?
If you're religious, you'll get a lot of money for it.
Okay.
If you're wealthy.
Okay. And even if we don't necessarily buy into this idea of, outright name it and claim it, or if I'm faithful, I'll get rich. If I'm faithful, I'll drive a Cadillac. By the way, I saw a Cadillac station wagon. If you happen to see me driving one, it's not because I'm a preacher and I think I need one. It's a really nice car, and I might get a good deal. I can't afford it right now anyway. But I've heard of some of these preachers that, like Creflo Dollar said, that it is necessary for him to drive expensive cars and wear expensive clothing because that demonstrates to the world that he is a child of God and that God blesses his children.
Well, his last name is Dollar.
His last name is Dollar, yeah. All right. I saw an article. I'm not going to get into that. Never mind. Let me go back to this. All right, so I don't think that any of us would buy into that garbage. But what we do is sometimes we find ourselves buying into a weakened form of it. Believing that so long as we are faithful to God, then our lives are going to be pretty much problem-free, right? And that if we do experience problems, well, number one, sometimes that causes some people to just lose their faith outright. Causes other people to kind of question it. Makes some people think, what did I do wrong? Is God cursing me for this? Dude, you just stubbed your toe because you got up in the middle of the night and you weren't looking where you were going. I don't think that's a curse by God. But we kind of buy into this philosophy in one form or another if we're not careful anyway. This is yet another occasion in the Bible, and the Bible is flooded with it. The fact is, we have an enemy, right? And that enemy, Satan, will do anything that he can to stop the work of God, to compromise it in one way or another. And this is just an illustration of that. He's going to use human agents who don't even know that they're being used in doing some of these things. And so it ought not surprise us. That's my main point. Listen, we're gonna hit some roadblocks. We're going to have some difficulties. We're not the only ones. Okay. Let's go ahead and start this last portion of the book. Up to this point, we've had primarily this material rebuilding of the wall. Now things turn more toward a spiritual side and the spiritual development and fortification of God's people. All right? And that's always at play, right? It's always at play. And while God may be concerned and is concerned about certain material things, I mean, He created the world and created it for us to abide in. At the same time, the day is coming when He will destroy everything material. God is primarily concerned with what? The spiritual, yeah, the spiritual, the eternal. And so these people need to be fortified spiritually. All right, so we have the wall completed, and that does take up a little bit of the first part of chapter 7. Then it was when the wall was built, and I had hung the doors, when the gatekeepers, the singers, and the Levites had been appointed, that I gave the charge of Jerusalem to my brother Hanani, and Hananiah, the leader of the citadel, for he was a faithful man and feared God more than many. Notice that. Nehemiah puts in this position of leadership what kind of person? One that feared God. A faithful person. Sometimes we in our human reasoning say we're going to put an unfaithful person in a position where he has great responsibility so as to make him faithful. That's the opposite of what God's Word says. 2 Timothy 2:2, and the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to what? Faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. Now, I do encourage us to encourage the weak and disciple them, but we don't place them in positions of leadership and thinking that if we do that, they'll get strong. All right, so good example here of that. And I said, verse 3, do not let the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot, and while they stand guard, let them shut and bar the doors, and appoint guards from among the inhabitants of Jerusalem, one at his watch station and another in front of his house. Listen, the fact is they have enemies, right? I mean, it's been demonstrated now. So they need to prepare for that. All right, the next heading in my Bible, I don't know about yours, is the captives who remained, or returned rather, to Jerusalem. And then we have a list of these people. Guess what? We're moving on to chapter 8 now. Okay, what's the significance of this? Let's hit that for just a moment. What's the significance of listing these people?
Who are they?
All of the people, all tribes were represented.
Yeah. We have a record of God's people who were brought back. The Israelites were very good at this, no doubt because God required it, but they were very good at keeping these kinds of records. All right? And later on, Paul even has to deal with that in the church about genealogies. I mean, it got to the point where that was all that mattered. When the focus again should have been on not physical genealogies, but what? Our spiritual relationship with Christ. All right, but at this point and this time in history with these people, it is important because of the promises to come. All right, and then verse 73, we skip down to chapter 7, verse 73. So the priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the singers, some of the people, the Nethinim, and all Israel dwelt in their cities. That's good news, isn't it? The work's completed. The physical rebuilding. I heard a bell. So rather than starting chapter 8, we'll end it there. But remember, please keep in mind the bigger picture here. God is in charge. God is powerful. Trust Him no matter what. Thank you.
You don't